I'm not matching profiles, I'm matching people.
How far are you willing to go to become you? I'm asked that same question every morning. The connection has been lost to each other and to ourselves. Toxicity continues to rise while self-worth continues to fall. This was created out of sheer necessity, the desire to create change and curve the culture back to connection. My journey has rerouted my idea of who I'm becoming. Connection begins within, continues outward. Love you, then love me, in that order. If I'm about to get uncomfortable, then so are you. I'm learning who I am. Now I want to get to know you. Connection over convenience.
Shit. Okay, hold on. Yeah. I was just reheating my coffee because it was cold.
Do what you got to do.
Let me get in the good lighting.
You're not supposed to reheat coffee, though. You're supposed to drink it and then make a new batch. I think it's against the law to reheat coffee.
I know. I do that. And you know what's really funny? I don't know what it is, but it's like I always drink it and then there's like this much left when it gets cold. And like every single time, like I never can finish it. I don't know what it is. There's always this much left. And usually I rebatch it, but then I saw the phone and I was like, shit, I'll just reheat it. Sorry, I'm a mess. Dude, I just did an Instagram story.
Yeah.
So I have this t-shirt on that my best friend gave me. It says coffee, yoga, wine, repeat. And I did my story where I'm like, lately I've been forgetting the yoga part. It's just coffee, wine, repeat.
Well, it's like that last part of the, hold on one second. I'm just testing. Check. 1, 1, 2. The last part where you're leaving that much coffee left, that's like your yoga. You're like the process is slightly off.
I seriously, like I'm losing it lately. Like I've been struggling. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it's been tough for me. Like I didn't get out of bed yesterday until like 8 at night. Ate dinner at 8 at night. Then went back to bed at like 10.
Hold on.
I'm miserable right now. But anyways, it's all good.
You got up at 8:00 p.m.
Yeah, that's when I got out of bed.
Oh, okay.
I have my moments. I tell people I have my moments where I cannot get out of bed. Like I rather dream. I'm a dreamer.
Were you dreaming big?
Yeah, I always dream very vividly. And this is the thing. And I've come to realize like I'm so isolated and I really have like, I'm an extrovert. I'm missing like human connection. I'm missing all of that. And so in my dreams, this sounds horrible, but in my dreams, I'm actually like, they're so vivid where I feel like I actually live in my dreams more than just living. It sounds horrible, but like for me, I'm like, I'd rather just dream because at least in my dreams, I'm hugging someone. I'm like interacting with someone. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird.
Did you ever think that you can merge the two though?
Yeah, but I don't have any, I really have like no social life in Virginia. That's why it's a tough one for me. Cause I was in San Diego for 5 weeks, you know, with my family, with my friends, being super active every day, like having a life. And then I come back here to the complete opposite where I have no life here. So
I saw something interesting. You're thinking of moving back, and you had that tough conversation with your son the other night.
Yes, I did. I had it with my son and my daughter, but my daughter is very much like me. So it's not as tough with her because she's like, Mom, I'd move if I were you. It's tough when it's with my son because my son is just like my ex-husband and he's a super realist and very like, and he lays into me. Like my 19-year-old has always treated me like he has to take care of me. Like he has to kind of, because he almost looks at me like I just don't make the right decisions or I don't do the right thing. Like he just, it's different with him. So it's always tough when I have those.
What was the dynamic like with your ex-husband?
We're fun. We're good friends. Like we get along great. There's a reason why I divorced him. But as far as as divorcees, like we have a great relationship.
That's good to know. I like
your video thing keeps like doing something every now and then. I don't know what it is.
All right, hold on.
Because this is not like recorded or anything, right? We're just being stupid right now.
Oh, we're recording, but it's
we are?
Yeah,
okay.
why not?
I'm like looking at my hair.
It's real. Tell me if the thing keeps doing that weird thing or if it stops.
It for a moment there was like flashing to some kind of weird like color, fluorescent color.
Oh. Yeah, this is real life. We just we kind of hop into these things, so it's like sharing a cup of. I got my my non-microwaved, it's water actually. So I wouldn't.
Okay, and it's super cute. It's
like
really
that?
cute, your mug.
It's hearts. I love it.
Mine says California on it.
Ah, see that? And that's the place you'd like to go, right?
That's where I'm going to move to eventually. I mean, that's the thing is like, my plan was always to move when my daughter graduated from high school, but being out there for those 5 weeks, I came back and my kids, like, as much as they're like, hey mom, are you going to come back for your birthday? Are you going to come back for this? I come back and they don't give a shit. I was like, then why am I even here? You know, like, and so that's why I was like, maybe I should move now. And even my ex was like, well, I mean, think about it. So we came up with a compromise that what I'll do is that I'll just start visiting more often and for longer lengths. Where before I just couldn't do that because I had an actual job in an office to go to. But now that I have my own business, like I can do whatever I want and wherever I want. So it gives me the freedom to do that now, where before I didn't have the freedom to do that.
You just spent quite a long time in California. Was that a definitely an internal time for you? Did a lot of things happen in the past for a couple of weeks being there? Was it transformational time for you?
Yeah, because so even though I visit San Diego 2 to 3 times a year, this was the first time that I was away from Virginia for that length of a time. So it was 5 weeks. Yeah, your thing keeps doing something weird. So not only was I, back in my happy place for 5 weeks, but it was the first time being away from Virginia for that long and my kids. And, I was there because of my family. There was a family situation going on. My brother wasn't doing well. They needed my support. They needed all of that. So that's why I flew out there last minute. And I flew out there with just a suitcase thinking I was going to be there max 2 weeks. And then it turned into 5 weeks. It's like recycling my clothes. But yeah, it was crazy because when I moved to Virginia 21 years ago from San Diego, I needed to do that. As much of it was like a crazy move, going across country, following a guy that I was in love with, I needed to do that in order to separate from my family because we're super enmeshed. Every family has a crazy dynamic and everyone has issues. Well, one of the biggest issues in my family is we're super, it's not healthy. And so I needed to get away. I needed to mature. So moving away from that was the best thing I could have ever done. So then 21 years later, going back there for 5 weeks, being under the same roof as my mom and my brother and having that whole dynamic, it made me realize that I have grown so much and I have matured so much that I'm okay now. I can move back to San Diego and have my boundaries and not be back in that old, dynamic in the family. So that was a good thing. Was it like a codependency, would you say? When you were at the time, you say it's unhealthy. What do you mean by unhealthy? What kind of environment was it? So I particularly wasn't codependent. I've never been a codependent person. My dad was codependent on me because my mom and my dad, their marriage was falling apart. So then I came in as the wife. So then my dad depended on me as being his wife, essentially, in the sense, and I know that sounds super weird, but for instance, my dad loved to go out to eat every night, for dinner, that was his thing. My dad's a doctor, he's super busy and he just likes to go out. And my mom never liked doing that. So at the age of 9, I started being my dad's dinner date. And we would go to fancy restaurants. And so what happens is that once you're there with your dad, then your dad starts opening up more. And then you start being kind of like that person for him. And then you kind of start being a therapist. And then my mom and my brother had a very codependent relationship. My brother's 5 years younger. So my brother grew up, and that's part of his issue right now. And part of a lot of what's happening is that his self-worth, his self-love, his anything is based on the love of my parents and how my parents think about him. He's obsessed. And right now my dad and my brother aren't talking. So then he's thinking I'm worthless because my own father and I can't have a relationship. So that means I'm unworthy of any love. I'm unworthy of anything. And it's trying to explain to him, hey, that your worth and your it shouldn't be based on your parent. Yes, it's great and all, but at the end of the day, come on, don't give them that much, power in the sense that I guess I love my parents and I want to make them proud, but my everyday decisions in my everyday life isn't based on my parents, on what they're going to think or, So yeah, there's a lot of like,
Did your brother ever, just like how you, first of all, it's a tremendous amount of pressure to put on yourself. That's like a responsibility of your role at the time. You felt taking on, the dinner dates and the wife role to your father. It's a tremendous amount of pressure. And at some point you realized creating healthy boundaries and the only ways to essentially move to the other side of the United States. Your brother, however, he stayed in the same environment. Is that correct?
He moved he was in San Francisco for a while and then in Colorado. But he's the type of person that talks to my mom every single day. Like, I don't need to talk to my parents for weeks. I'm okay. Like, I still love them, but I just don't need that. Like, he needed that. So anytime anything was going on, the first person he would call is my mom. So his external worth essentially is by her judgment. Like he needs that. It sounds like hers and my dad's, both. And that's the thing that I tell people, because I talk a lot about how I ended up clinically depressed and all of that, and I never really talk about like where it stemmed from, and it stemmed because of the family dynamic. So not only was I like that wife role, but people don't realize either, I have a sister that's 14 years younger than me. So when I was 14, I kind of took on a mom role too, because my mom was 41. She was like, oh my gosh, it was an oopsie type situation where she was just like, I'm 41 years old and I am starting all over again. And, here I'm 14 and my brother's 9. So she was, we were independent. And then a baby comes along. Well, I started kind of taking on the role as the mom for my little sister. Like, I literally would have her all the time. When I got my license at 16, I would take her everywhere I would go. And so then I really grew up very quickly in that mommy role and the wife role. So, and I'm a perfectionist. And so what happened too is that my brother was a troublesome kid, and a lot has to do with the fact that he's gay. And it's not because of what was happening so much around him, it was what was happening internally growing up and knowing that he was, different. And, at that time it was still taboo. It was still like you weren't as open about it. And so he had all those struggles. So he was a very angry kid and gave my parents a lot of problems. And because of that too, then I said, oh shit, I got to be even more perfect, because I can't give my parents any problems because they already have their hands full with this one. So then it put even more pressure on me to be the perfect child. And we're not all perfect. And so then I took on so much that by the time I went to college, it kind of like all hit me when I'm like independent at college. And I'm still kind of like enmeshed in that. My parents still call me about my brother, my sister, all of it. And so it's like I couldn't separate myself. And I just, realized with my OCD, perfectionism, all of that, that's what caused me to go into this, mental state of where I was just like, what's the point of living if I can't be everything to everyone? You just start getting into your head. And that's when I just became clinically depressed and everything. And that's when just went into a really dark place, sleeping all day long, not eating. And then finally one day was just like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to take my life, because at this point, like, what kind of life am I living right now? I'm not. And so that's when I decided in college, I was just like, all right, I'm going to end this. And obviously it didn't happen. And I went to therapy, but that's essentially like what led to that dark place was.
Is that yeah. I mean, is that where the transformation began at that moment? Where you really started
No, I mean, I tell people that it probably took me at getting divorced at age 35 that I started actually seeing somewhat of a transformation. And it wasn't until, and that's the thing, is I tell people all the time, it's so important just to like share your truth and speak your truth. Because it wasn't until last year that I actually started talking about the fact that I had been depressed, all of it. That's when I really started the transformation, when I actually became vulnerable for the first time pretty much in my entire life, because I was taught not to be vulnerable, not to be weak, not to cry, all of that. That's how I grew up, to like, you pull your shit together. So it wasn't until last year that I just was like, screw it.
Do you realize that your search for perfection is really a search for protection? So by perfection, you're actually trying to protect yourself and all these things that you held in, all these emotions, all this vulnerability that you were told you can't have. And all of a sudden, you kind of cut the hole in perfection, and all of a sudden, all these things came out. The vulnerability came out, all these things. And that's where the transformation began. When you took perfection, essentially as an ego, moved it to the side and replaced it with humility, is when this whole journey, it sounds like, just began.
Yeah. So I tell people that, I just turned 45. So just now I'm starting to realize that. And not only that, Brené Brown, where she talks about vulnerability, where the number one common factor with people that experience joy and love and all of those positive emotions, the common denominator was vulnerability, was that they were willing to be vulnerable and willing to expose themselves in order to receive love and all of that. And I didn't realize that either until recently as well. And so that's what's really cool, is because I was able to open up and be vulnerable. That's when all those, things started kind of coming into my life, where before I was blocking it.
Yeah, it's a block. It's an internal block, literally. And once you remove that block, and it's just like a volcano, it erupts, and all of a sudden your surroundings probably change pretty quickly. You start vibrating at a different frequency. Your people around you were probably different at that point. And that's when
I got rid of some people in my life that I realized were toxic, and they were just negative energy and all of that. And that was another powerful thing that I learned as well, that, I have a choice as to who I want to surround myself with. I think, we forget that it's okay to divorce our friends, or, it's okay. Like it doesn't mean that you're necessarily a bad person. Cause I was taught to be, to be like, you accept everyone for who they are. It's the unconditional love, all of that. But yet I was like, but if it doesn't feel right,
you can still accept and still love from afar, but you can outgrow relationships too. And so by in 5, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to be at such a different place, because you're going to keep, transformation is going to continue with you now. It's not going to change. The people that you were with, they're going to be at that same place they were a couple of years ago in 10, 15 years. And they would have held you back. So it's not that you don't love them and you can care for them and everything else, but it's boundaries. Is if you continue to live in that negative energy or around that negative energy with them, they are going to hold you down. And the only way to do it is literally cut the ties or very strict boundaries to release that negative energy. And all of a sudden your vibration, your frequency starts like, woo, it just goes to a completely different place.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because even my ex-husband realizes now that he was holding me back. And that was one of the main reasons why we did get divorced, and I just couldn't be in that marriage. And, at the time he didn't get it, but now that we're going on 10 years and he's seen what I've managed to do in the last decade with my life, he's realized crap, I was holding her back. I wasn't allowing her to just kind of be her. And so he sees that. And I think that's why there's a lot of mutual respect between the two of us, because he knows he's not a bad person. He's an amazing father. He's an amazing ex-husband. He's a good friend, all of those things. But he realizes that as a husband and wife, it just wasn't going to work. And I wasn't going to get to the place that I needed to be with him as my husband.
That's extremely emotionally mature on both your sides to understand. And it doesn't take anything away from him either, but you guys probably didn't continue the relationship with yourselves when you were together. Possibly you did, but he did not continue to grow on his own individually, a relationship with himself. And so I don't even know if he was a codependent or not, but however, you guys, as you continue to grow, it sounds like he was stagnant or not going in the same direction. So if you don't continue to grow, you literally outgrew your own marriage. And it doesn't take anything away from him, but it's actually extremely mature of him to recognize that and to say, I am holding you back from your full potential, and for whatever reason is to let you go. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, because it's interesting. I'm, like I said, divorced, 45, and as you get older, it's, your wants and needs change. And so I have a lot of people that are like, why don't you get back together with your ex-husband? Like, you guys have a great relationship, all of that, right? And, and then there's all those people that as you get older, and I'm going to decline, my dad just called me. Sorry, Dad. So what happens too is that as you get older, you get the people saying, oh, it's not about passion anymore. It's not about the attraction. It's about someone you can get along with and grow old together. So then, I started thinking in my head, like, okay, well, should I get back together with my ex? Because we get along. But then at the same time, I still want to be hopeful that I can find someone that I have that still somewhat of a passion for and attraction, and still be best friends, right? I feel like we could still have both of those. But yet, I have my moments where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. At this point, maybe it is just being with someone that gets you. I don't know. That's a struggle.
I don't agree with the advice that you're being given. That it's just is how things change, and so as long as you have your friends to be back with somebody, to me you can be the best of friends, but that doesn't mean you're vibrating at the same frequency, and you can have the same interests, but if you don't want the same thing out of life, then that's not a partnership. You can still be best of friends. I have friends who, we have the same interest, but we don't want the same thing out of life. They're two different things. And so if you don't want the same thing out of life as another person, then that's like essentially giving up on your life to go back to something like that, or put yourself back into an environment like that. That's saying it's okay for me to just exist at this point and give up on my life so I can be in this comfortable environment. I completely disagree with the advice you're giving.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do no, and that's why I haven't done it. Like when people say, I'm like, no, I tell them all the time, like I just be going back to the same thing. Where as much as he might be in a different place, where he's like, no, Raquel, I support you. I know him well enough to understand that he'll still have some jealousy, resentment. Those things will still arise in a way where I'll be like, oh, here we go again, right? Not saying that people can't change, but I do feel like there comes a point when we get in an age and a place in our lives where it's like, all right, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Also,
bullshit.
But it's funny how many people say that, how many people are like that. Hey,
I know that because they
this
think
is me, take it or leave it. I say that sometimes.
It's thinking small and it's thinking comfortably. It's easy to say that. It's easy to say that we can't change anymore because you know why? The hardest thing to do is make the incision and actually do the inner work and continue the inner work until you can unwire and rewire all those thoughts. And so that's hard to do. The easy thing to do is, you know what? This is who I am. And I say bullshit to that.
Yeah, I do believe that it's a constant evolution. We're constantly growing, constantly learning until we die. I really do. Like my dad, he just called, he's 70, he's going to be 75 and he's constantly learning. And so I have like someone to look up to that is doing the same thing at that age. Right. So it's like, it's never ending. But I do feel like, I guess you're right. It's like kind of a cop out to say that, like, it's like, easy. I can't change. I'm already 45. Like, sorry.
Yeah. It's an easy
so I'm
response.
going to have to stop saying that, Jason, because I do tend to say that.
Here's the deal. You ready? You're only 45. You're just getting started. Like I see your energy. I do feel
like I'm just getting started.
That's the reality. That's fuck the reality beliefs. That is the real reality. Your reality that you're just getting started. And if you're just getting started at 45, then it completely, just from everything I just said, you can just start rewiring and starting a transformation at 45. So everybody who's saying they're 45, 55, this is who I am, speak to Raquel and see what she's doing in her life. All right. She is proof of this. Serious.
Yeah, I guess you're right in that respect.
I am fully pro. I'm 100% in your corner, Raquel. Go team.
Oh, thank you. I have a fan.
That's right.
A cheerleader.
That's right.
You know what? We all need cheerleaders in our lives too. You know what I mean? Like, I think people forget that too, how important it is to have people that are in your corner, that are supporting you or encouraging you. And I think that's what I try to do, at least through my social media or through the, people in my life, is constantly support, encourage them too, because especially right now, I think people are just kind of, getting stuck in their heads, like what I'm doing too. I'm getting stuck in my head too. And then we all can say really mean stuff to ourselves. It's easier to be negative and to say mean things than the opposite. So it's important to have other people outside of you being like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. Well, here's two things. It's great to do that. And also at the same time, for the other side of that is to be able to completely block out the noise. So
Yes.
Judgment, I could care less, what people say at this point. And so once you get there, life gets easy. It's like literally taking the ego, moving it out, replacing with humility, and your whole perspective changes. Your life shifts. Life gets easy. And all those thoughts that are in your head, they're gone. And things get really quiet. And then you can hear the universe. You can hear what you're supposed to do. It's like you're tapping into the universe. Your energy shifts at that point. And so, again, you can make the shift at any age. It's just how uncomfortable are you willing to get?
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'm definitely getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
I love that.
Even this
Love
conversation right now, as open as I can be. I've been, and I'll kudos because I know that you were like, I'm going to get you to open up. What I've shared with you, I haven't shared with a lot of people.
Exclusive today.
Yeah, especially my family, because that's the thing too, is that I have to kind of give the background as to why why things have happened. It's important to that part of it, right? So to talk about my family members and talk about, their stuff, it's hard because that's the whole stigma too, where everyone's like, you shouldn't be airing your dirty laundry, or you shouldn't be talking that personally about somebody else or any of that. But you kind of have to, you know what I mean? Like you have to own certain things and also show that everybody's family has their stuff. Everybody, nobody's perfect. And, like if, for instance, my dad heard this, or my mom or my brother, I would hope that they wouldn't get pissed off at me for sharing certain things. I would hope that they'd own it too and be like, yeah, you're right. You know what? Like we might have not been the best parents, and we might have not dealt with the situation the way we should have. They say that to me now. They own up to a lot of things. But yeah, I don't want there to be like any shame behind the fact that we all are just, kind of trying to go through life the best way we can and trying to parent the best way we can, trying to be the best person we can. Well, at least I hope. There might be people that don't give a shit, but I would think that the majority are hoping to be the best versions of themselves.
Absolutely.
I hope. If they're not, oh well, sorry. That sucks.
They're missing out on this beautiful life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. When everybody thinks that they're alone, they're really not alone. There's 7+ billion people on this earth. Do you know how many people have gone through the same thing that you go through? Millions and millions and millions and millions.
Yeah.
So we're not alone. And but we all think we do until somebody comes around like you who opens up, as you finally opened up and started sharing, and all of a sudden you started attracting people in the same energy that have gone through the same thing, and all of a sudden they can relate to you, right? And so now they know they're not alone because they're being, they're attracted to you of who you are, and know that they can talk to you and have somebody. It's like you're creating your allies, and so for me, we talk about vulnerability, but to me, connection is the root of it all, and intimacy and vulnerability are like part of connection, but connection being the root of it all. And until we have that connection with ourselves, we're never going to be able to fully have it with each other. And that comes with being vulnerable, opening up to other people. And these conversations you have, you're not negatively talking about your parents, but you are talking about a dynamic that has changed over time. And so it sounds like it's even opened up the conversation with your parents to be open to trying to work on doing things possibly different ways to shift your internal culture with your family to take a hard look at that. So it is accountability on everybody's part. And if you don't want to be accountable, those are usually the people who they always vibrate at such a negative frequency anyway, that it's like they're the first to judge, but they can't be judged themselves.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, I was trying to, when I was in discussions with my family, and I had this discussion too with my ex when I came back, because just like you said, I had to have that talk of like, hey guys, this is how we've kind of been used to acting towards each other all these years, and it's like our dynamic. I said, but it has to change. Something has to give, something has to change, because we can't keep moving forward and living our lives this way. It's just not healthy. Like, we've got to figure something out. Like, no more, like, stop the madness. Right. And so then when I came back, I had a conversation with my ex-husband, because there's a dynamic between me and my ex and my kids, where my kids listen to my ex. Like, my ex has a very smart ass, sarcastic way about talking with our kids. Like, it's a constant, like, make fun of each other, constantly just being an ass sometimes. And so what happens is my kids start treating me that way. So then I'll come over and all they do is make fun of me. Like, all they do that. And it's like, it's not that I'm being insensitive. It's just like, guys, like, at some point, like, I don't want to be made fun of constantly. Like, sorry, there are times where I want to have a legit conversation where you guys aren't judging me and nitpicking every little thing that you think is wrong with me. And so my ex realized that a lot, it's because of the way he's talking to our kids. And so my ex made a comment of like, oh, well, that's just how it's done. Like, that's just how I'm used to talking to them. I said, well, it needs to change too, because we can't keep moving forward like this, because I don't want my kids to like think that that's okay, that whoever they talk to, they can make fun of them and have it like, it's a level of disrespect. And I'm like, we have to change it. And he's like, all right. So I think he's like trying to be better about it. But yeah, it was something where I realized, like, the excuse of, well, that's just kind of how it is. No, it doesn't need to just be how it is.
You're a disruptor in a way. I'd say you're a disruptor. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, being a disruptor. You're breaking cultural habits that you don't have to stand for. And I think going back to our conversation this is how it is. People think they're locked in this personality, this little box that this is who I am, this is how it is. And again, I'll say that's bullshit. You can change your personality. Are you willing to? Are you able to? Everybody's able to, but not everybody's willing to.
Right.
And you as a disruptor,
and
you're not afraid to project your voice. And I respect the hell out of it. I love that in you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been tough. Just like I said, it's funny because even my mom will reach out to me because she'll send all my stuff to my family members in Mexico, like her sisters and her cousins and, just all of them, just because she is very proud of me. But it's funny how they all say the same thing. Wow, who knew that Raquel had that in her? Who knew that she was that type of person? Because I grew up with this where they all looked at me like I was this perfectionist. They used to call me Miss Frances Parker. Frances Parker is a private school that I went to. That's what they used to call me. All my aunts and uncles, because, oh, here comes Miss Frances Parker, because I was such a rule follower and everything had to be perfect and all of it. And I was almost, I joke around saying I wasn't the black sheep of the family. I was like the white sheep of the family, because everyone else was super narcissistic, egocentric, creatives, like just very vocal. And so it's funny when people are like, wait, you're the quiet one in your family? I'm like, absolutely. Like, I am the quiet one, the conservative one, if you will. So then when my family members see what I'm doing, they're kind of like, whoa, like, we never knew that was what Raquel was like. It's like, yeah, I've always been like this. I just was in an environment where people didn't nurture that. They didn't celebrate that in me at all. If anything, they like put me in that box. And so I thought like, well, shoot, this is the box that I'm stuck in. Like, I guess I'm going to be in it forever. And now I realize, like, screw that.
Blew right out of the box.
Screw it. Like, that's why I tell people all the time, because everyone's like, you're kind of all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, because I am all over the place, because I have so many different interests. Like, I love people don't realize I love classical music. I love sports. I love classical, I love sports, I love art, but then I also, I'm a super geek where I love like astronomy, and I'm all about Stephen Hawking's, like, I'm obsessed with black holes. There's so many different dimensions to who I am as a person. And so it bothers me when people feel like they can only put out one thing about themselves or one personality or one aspect of who they are. It's like, no. You can share all of it. It's okay. If someone can't put you in a box, then good. That's a good thing, because I think so many people want to put everyone in a category. And I'm like, I refuse to be in a category.
The rules when you realize the rules don't apply to you, that's when it changes everything. The rules don't apply. There are no rules.
Yeah. And that's kind of like what I do with my social media and with my LinkedIn, is that I'm that person where I'm like, I'm not doing what everybody else does. And I'm still just as, successful or as the next person that maybe is doing everything the way they're supposed to be doing it. I'm not doing it that way. And look, I'm still able to have a presence and to have, people great connections that I met like you. And so, yeah, I try to be that person of like, look, I'm an example of someone that's not following the rules anymore. And obviously, I'm going to follow like the law and the rules, like.
Yes,
I'm not sitting here like
beliefs. I'm
not like some anarchist.
The beliefs don't exist, though.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like it's not doing it like everybody else does. I'm over that. I used to do that for so many years, and what did it get me? It got me into a dark, awful, awful place.
Well, welcome to here. Cheers to Raquel 4.5, right? 45.
Yes, 4.5.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for sharing. I'm glad I never have anything quite planned for these conversations.
I had no clue either. And I got on and I thought like, all right, I guess we're just gonna have a conversation.
I know where we're going, but I never know how we're gonna get there. And I appreciate so much that we were able to get there and you opened up. And I look so forward to everybody hearing this and getting to know you on another side of you, that things that they might not know. So it was a great conversation for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
I did, and I will be honest, it was a scary conversation and uncomfortable. Like I might be sitting here smiling, but laughing's my defense mechanism. So that's why I laugh a lot and I'm smiling, because that does make me feel better when I'm in a state of like, oh my gosh, this is happening, like I'm saying this, I'm talking about this. So people might perceive it as like, oh, she's so fine opening up. No. It's scary as hell.
and even more so, I appreciate you feeling safe with me and safe here to be able to have this conversation with me. So thank you.
It's because I have no clue who's going to end up listening to this.
I don't either.
Yikes.
A couple million people, that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And
Thanks,
we will be
Jason.
in touch shortly. Enjoy the rest of your day. Are you not going to go back to back to bed or for dream state?
No. Once I'm up, I'm up. Like that's the thing is like once I get out of bed, I don't ever go back in it. Like I'm really good about that. It's just getting out of it to begin with can be a struggle for me sometimes. What's
the best way for people to get a hold of you?
My social media, I guess my LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay.
You can always slip into my DMs.
We'll leave all the links for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. You're the best.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, you took me there.
I knew we'd get there. This is what happens every time. Everybody's come on, says, oh, fuck, I can't believe I said that, but great. And they have these blocks that we get past, and like everybody. That's like this is what happens when you come on the XXO podcast. These are real vulnerable conversations of connection. This is intimacy. So people think their way of thinking intimacy, being intimate with somebody, but this is real intimacy. This is how we get closer with ourselves and each other. This is real connection.
No, and that's the thing is like. I was excited for today because, like I was telling you, it's just been really, my son went away on Monday. I really have no friends here. Like 2 days ago, it really hit me where I just wanted to be able to call someone and go and hang out. Like I just needed that. And I couldn't think of anybody. And then I drove and parked over at so I used to work there, but I also lived right by it. It's a Italian restaurant. They have this really cool kind of bar setup where it's almost like Cheers, where you go and you always run into someone, I know them, everyone there. And so that's the only place that I feel comfortable enough going by myself and not worrying about like, oh, they think she's like a hussy and she's here, like a streetwalker or whatever. And with COVID, the bars are closed. Like the bar stools are taken away. And so I walked by to see like, oh, maybe I'll go in. But then I was like, I don't feel comfortable because I was so used to sitting at the bar, like in the corner. And then everyone's outside at tables. I didn't want to be at a table by myself. Like that wasn't didn't want that experience. I wanted the experience of me sitting at the bar, talking to strangers, running into people I know. And the fact that I don't have that anymore, it really hit me hard, where I was like, I don't even know where to go. And I'm going to get emotional right now, because it's starting to like really like now it's like, it's funny because we talk about how a lot of us haven't processed what's happening and how that's going to affect us. Like, it's going to really affect us. And I feel like now I'm in that place of like, I'm starting to process it.
Yeah.
And I realize like, it's like our lives, our world has changed. And like those type of things that I didn't realize how important something like that was for me. And the fact that I don't have it anymore, and I don't have like an alternative, it's really like, it's heavy. And so that's why lately I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I in Virginia? Like, why am I opting to stay in an area that does, like, feel no fulfillment, but it also, it's like you risk your happiness at times for your children. And I'm essentially risking a lot of it for my daughter to stay here 2 more years. And, you know, I would also feel guilty if I went to San Diego and I was away from my daughter and she was experiencing something like I am now and needed me there. And, you know, and if FaceTime's not going to do it, you know, like I would need to be able to hug her, even though she hates me hugging her. So that's why I'm staying. But it's just, it's a lot that I've just been like taking in this week. That's all. It just happens to be like,
it's a very transformational past couple weeks for many people. The past couple weeks have been very different for many. I'm hearing that from so many people. Something kind of shifted, and the emotions are coming out right now. So let me know how I can support you, and if I can do anything for you.
Well, and I appreciate that. Like, thank you. It's just, it's just really hard for me to reach out to. Like, I'm not that person that's going to reach out to someone and be like, hey, I need to talk. And then, you know, and then when you tell your own father, like, oh, I'm not doing well. And I've come from a family of narcissists. That's another reason why it's like, they're all very narcissistic. And so here my dad calls me and I am like, he's like, how are you? I'm like, well, I'm kind of struggling. I just really feel lonely. Like, I'm okay being alone. I'm like, I'm just feeling lonely. And he's like, yeah, that's awful. Me too. He's like, he's like, but to change the subject. So I was taught when I went to talk to your brother, you know what I mean? Like, they're so quick to turn it around on them that's a tough one too, where I'm like, fuck you, Dad. Like, I was just like getting ready to open up to you and you totally dismissed it. So then it makes me be like, well, then screw that. If I can't even like reach out to talk to my dad, then what's the point of even trying with anybody else?
I'm gonna have you join one of our conversations with myself and my team, and you know 𝗫𝗫𝗃, right? You know 𝗫𝗃𝗃.
Yes, love her.
So, and I don't know if you know the other part of my team, but we have weekly conversations, and as we're building our own platform, 𝗫𝗃𝗃 and she's a co-founder with me, as well as a couple other people. But I'd love for you to come in one of these weeks and join the conversations. We have the weekly just meetings, but it's a majority of our environment is because we're restoring connection to humanity. We're building this massive platform to eliminate the fear of intimacy and vulnerability. And so we practice essentially connection begins within and travels outwards. So we're building that with our own team. And yesterday we had an hour meeting, and everybody has these very open conversations because we're creating a safe space. We're trying to transform, 1 million lives by 2025. But we have these conversations internally. So the conversation you and I are having, the rest of the team is sitting there and we're completely open. So as your father, you started to open up and then he kind of changed the subject. There's none of that. It's such a safe space that we're creating with our own internal team to be able to then scale out. And I'd love for you to come in and feel that energy of all of us and feel that safeness to understand what we're doing and to be able to share a little bit about you. And it's a very safe environment with our team. There's 5 of us total with me. But as comfortable as we're having this right now, it's that comfortable, even more comfortable with everybody else there. It's just super safe space.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with 𝗫𝗃𝗃. We've done a Zoom, and I feel super comfortable with her as well. So if it's people like you and her, like I can only imagine it is a great team.
So I'll let you know.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks for like being my therapy session today.
Anytime.
You were like my therapist, so that you really, you helped me way more than I think you realize. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you shortly.
All right.
Enjoy.
Bye. All right.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.